I can't say. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't have testified against him. I can say that much.
Yeah.
But I don't know what my reply would have been to the whole situation.
The courtroom fell silent. Bone Sloan, a former gang member turned filmmaker, had just been run over by Suge Knight. Both his legs were broken, yet standing before a judge, he refused to testify. No names, no cooperation, just a wall of loyalty or fear. This wasn't just any trial, and it wasn't just any defendant. It was Marion Suge Knight, the man who once ruled hip-hop with an iron fist and a blood-red logo, the co-founder of Death Row Records, the shadowy giant behind Tupac, Dre, and Snoop. In the 90s, Suge wasn't a music executive, he was an empire. But by 2015, that empire was in ruins. The streets didn't fear him the same way. The industry had moved on. The documentaries were being made without him. Then one night in Compton, at a burger stand next to the Straight Outta Compton film set, everything came crashing down. A pickup truck, a deadly hit and run, a man dead, another maimed, and Suge Knight in handcuffs once again. Only this time, he wasn't coming back. This is the story of the crash that ended an era, a final brutal chapter in the legacy of a man once too powerful to touch. Let's rewind the tape. From rap kingpin to legal pariah. There was a time when Suge Knight wasn't just a name, he was a warning. In the early 90s, Suge co-founded Death Row Records and turned it into a cultural wrecking ball. Dr. Dre's The Chronic, Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style, and Tupac's explosive All Eyes on Me, all of them carried that death row stamp. Suge walked through studios like a boss and through courtrooms like he owned them too. He made hits, made enemies, and made headlines, all at the same time. But while the public saw success, the backrooms told another story. Behind the platinum plaques were lawsuits, surveillance, intimidation, and a string of shattered partnerships. Suge wasn't just a businessman, he was a brawler. Security guards claimed they were roughed up. Rivals said they were stalked. Even Vanilla Ice had that infamous balcony story, part myth, part warning shot. And when Tupac died in a drive-by in 1996, Suge was behind the wheel, bloodied but alive. To some, it was fate. To others, something darker. Over the years, the music slowed, but the violence didn't. Suge spent time behind bars, lost control of Death Row, faced lawsuits that drained millions. One moment he was partying with celebrities, the next he was filing for bankruptcy. But no matter how far he fell, people whispered, "That's still Suge. Don't mess with him." By 2015, though, the fear had faded. Suge was no longer the puppet master of the West Coast. He was a relic, bruised, broke, and on the outside looking in. But inside, that old fire still burned. And when a movie set reopened wounds from his past, Suge didn't walk away. He showed up, and what happened next didn't just make the news, it defined the end of an era. What's your memory of Death Row's rise? Fearsome or fascinating? Drop your thoughts below. Set for confrontation, the Straight Outta Compton shoot. Hollywood was finally telling the story of NWA, the rise of the world's most dangerous rap group. For fans, Straight Outta Compton was a tribute. For Suge, it was unfinished business. He wasn't invited to consult, he wasn't asked to advise, and yet, Suge Knight's shadow loomed large over the entire movie. He'd been there when it all went down. The threats, the contracts, the split from Ruthless Records. Now the film was rolling and he was on the outside, watching his legacy be repackaged without him. He didn't take that lightly. Reports say Suge believed his name and likeness were used without permission. Some say he expected to be paid. Others claim it wasn't about money, it was about respect. Either way, it didn't sit right. And when word got out that filming was happening in Compton, it didn't take long for Suge to show up. On January 29, 2015, production was wrapping on a commercial shoot related to the film. Bone Sloan, a former gang member turned consultant on the movie, was on set. That's when Suge pulled up. He didn't come with a smile. Witnesses say he was angry, tense, demanding to talk. Bone stepped in to calm things down. He told Suge to leave. That didn't go well. The two exchanged heated words. Bone would later admit to swinging first. A scuffle broke out. No police, no movie crew interference, just two men tangled in a decades-old power struggle. Suge left the set, but he didn't go far. Later that night, Bone and Terry Carter, a local businessman and Suge's former friend, went to Tam's Burgers on West Rosecrans. They were trying to broker peace. Carter hoped to cool things down. Instead, what followed was one of the most disturbing moments in hip-hop's real-life history. The fateful encounter at Tam's Burgers. It was just after 3 p.m. on January 29, 2015. The sun was still up over Compton, but the energy outside Tam's Burgers felt heavy. Bone Sloan and Terry Carter stood in the parking lot, waiting. Carter, a familiar face in the neighborhood, had offered to mediate. He still believed Suge could be reasoned with. Bone, still upset from earlier, stood guard, uneasy, but trying to keep the peace. Then the red Ford Raptor appeared. Suge's truck rolled into the lot slowly, edging closer to where Bone and Carter stood. No music, no engine roar, just the crunch of tires over concrete. According to court testimony, Bone approached the driver's side window. Another argument, another swing. Bone would later admit he hit Suge again, just like earlier that day on the set. But then something changed. Suge's truck jerked into reverse. Bone went down hard, his legs caught under the wheels. Then, in a heartbeat, the truck lunged forward, fast and violent. Carter was still standing in front of it. The front bumper struck Carter in the chest. Witnesses say he didn't even have time to move. The truck ran straight over him, dragging him under, and kept going. Then, just like that, Suge sped off, vanishing down the street. Terry Carter lay dying on the pavement. Security footage captured it all. Grainy, raw, and horrifying. It wasn't a scuffle. It wasn't a getaway. It was a double hit. One man maimed, another killed. The scene played like something out of a nightmare. When paramedics arrived, Bone was conscious, screaming in pain. Carter, 55 years old, was already gone. A father, a husband, crushed under the wheels of a man he once called a friend. Suge didn't call the police. He didn't turn himself in. He disappeared. But the cameras had already spoken, and soon the law would too. Aftermath, a mogul behind bars. By the next morning, every news outlet had the same headline. Suge Knight wanted for murder. The man who once sat beside Tupac in a bullet-riddled BMW was now being hunted for, using a truck as a weapon. Surveillance footage from Tam's Burgers had gone public. Raw, unfiltered, impossible to explain away. The images showed the truck backing over Bone, then surging forward into Carter with devastating force. Within 24 hours, Suge turned himself in at the West Hollywood Sheriff's Station. But he didn't walk in like a man who made a mistake. He came in wearing sunglasses and silence, calm, controlled, still trying to own the narrative. His legal team wasted no time. They claimed self-defense. Suge, they said, had been lured into an ambush and feared for his life. He was trying to escape a violent attack. It wasn't murder, it was survival. But the prosecutors saw something else. A calculated move by a man who always operated through intimidation. They didn't just charge him with murder. They hit him with attempted murder and hit and run as well. Bail was set at $2 million, then raised to an astronomical $25 million. The judge called Suge a flight risk, a repeat offender, and someone capable of witness intimidation. The courtroom erupted. His lawyer said it was a death sentence disguised as bail. Meanwhile, Bone Sloan lay in a hospital bed with shattered bones, refusing to testify. Carter's family buried a father, a husband, a man they said was trying to keep peace, not provoke war. And Suge, he sat in a cell, locked up in LA County Jail, complaining of chest pain, claiming he was going blind, and firing his lawyers like clockwork. The death row CEO, who once commanded armies of lawyers and enforcers, was now isolated, battling a system he used to laugh at. The myth of Suge Knight was cracking, and behind those jailhouse walls, it was only just beginning. Courts and confrontation. The legal saga unfolds. For the next 3 years, Suge Knight's name echoed through Los Angeles courtrooms like a ghost from another era. Each appearance brought more spectacle, more chaos, more unraveling. He showed up in courtrooms visibly frail, claiming blindness and complications from diabetes. Some days he rolled in wearing orange jail fatigues and a large wooden cross. Other times he refused to come at all. He changed lawyers constantly, more than 15 over the course of the case. At one point, he even tried to represent himself. Behind the theatrics, though, the case was building. Prosecutors had the video, they had witnesses, but they also had one major problem. Bone Sloan wasn't talking. Despite being run over, Sloan stood firm. He told the court, "I will not help you put Suge Knight in prison." The jury never heard his testimony. That silence became one of the strangest twists in an already bizarre trial. Suge's team stuck to their story. He had been jumped. Bone had attacked him twice that day. Carter had unknowingly walked into the middle of it. Suge was trying to get away, not commit murder. But the footage said otherwise. The truck didn't just drive off in panic. It backed up, then surged forward. Fast, deliberate. Prosecutors argued that this wasn't self-defense, it was retaliation, a street-level execution of a grudge that went back decades. Suge's image in court was a shell of his past. No entourages, no press conferences, just a man staring down life in prison. And for once, the intimidation didn't work. Judges denied every motion to dismiss, every attempt to suppress evidence, every plea for leniency. 3 years dragged on. The longer it went, the clearer it became. This wasn't going to end in a mistrial or a loophole. In 2018, Suge finally blinked. He took a deal, no contest to voluntary manslaughter, a plea that came with a heavy cost. The same man who once rewrote contracts in parking lots with threats now had his fate inked in a courtroom plea. A shocking sentence, 28 years in prison. On October 4th, 2018, the courtroom was packed. Lawyers, journalists, family members, all waiting to hear the final word on a man who once dominated headlines and boardrooms with equal force. Suge Knight stood before the judge, emotionless. No swagger, no gold chains, just a bulky orange jumpsuit and a stare that couldn't hide what was coming. The sentence, 28 years in prison. 11 of those years came from the manslaughter plea. The rest were stacked on because of Suge's past, priors for assault and weapons charges. Under California's 3 strikes law, there were no shortcuts. This wasn't a slap on the wrist or a Hollywood ending. This was the fall of a man who built his career on intimidation, now caged by the very system he used to taunt. In the gallery, Terry Carter's family sobbed. His sister clutched a photo of her brother, shaking as the judge read the sentence. She spoke later to reporters saying, "There is no justice when the person you love is gone forever. But at least now we can breathe." Carter's daughter didn't hold back. She called Suge a coward, a selfish disgrace who killed my father and didn't even blink. Her pain pierced the room. Suge didn't apologize. He barely moved. No statement, no final words. Just a slow shuffle out of the courtroom and into history. For the first time in decades, the man who once walked backstage with bulletproof vests and bodyguards was no longer untouchable. His reputation, built on fear and myth, had collided with a cold courtroom reality. There would be no more studio sessions, no more boardroom bullying, no more calls from the top floor of Death Row Records. Suge Knight, the most feared man in rap, was now inmate BKF 6338, locked away, alone, and this time no one was coming to bail him out. Death Row's legacy, Suge's downfall. The moment Suge's sentence hit the airwaves, it felt like the curtain had finally dropped on a character too big for reality. The story that began in Compton with gold chains and gang ties had ended in a sterile courtroom with a concrete cell waiting. But this wasn't just about a man, it was about a label, a culture, and a legacy that helped shape a generation. Death Row Records had been more than a music empire. It was a symbol of West Coast dominance, flashy, rebellious, dangerous, and Suge was the center of it all. He wasn't just the boss, he was the enforcer, the shot caller, the myth. Artists feared him, labels envied him, the streets respected him. But over time, that empire rotted from the inside. Dre left, Snoop escaped, Tupac died, millions disappeared, and by the early 2000s, Death Row was a shell of itself, bankrupt, sold off in pieces, its iconic logo gathering dust in the archives. Suge tried to rebuild. He launched new ventures, teased comeback labels, claimed he was misunderstood, but the public had moved on. The new era of hip-hop didn't need a bully in a red suit shouting in back rooms. By the time Straight Outta Compton hit theaters in 2015, Suge was no longer feared. He was a relic, a walking cautionary tale. the kind of figure people whispered about but no longer answered the phone for. And that's what made his crash at Tam's Burgers feel so final. It wasn't just a tragic moment, it was the last swing of a man who didn't know the fight was already over. He tried to reclaim respect. He left a man dead. Now the legacy of Death Row sits frozen in time, iconic, legendary, and forever haunted by what it became. And Suge, he'll likely grow old behind bars, replaying the same question over and over. Where did it all go wrong?
Like, obviously, why I said Death Row fell was obviously bad business. Tupac lost his life. All the main artists from Death Row Records end up leaving. So at a certain point, it just became bad business. When you don't treat your employees or your business colleagues properly, you don't talk to them nice, then, people start deciding to relocate and reevaluate their situation and, think of things that's better. And I look at it like, Death Row was a good situation for a lot of us when we started, but it became a whirlwind of BS. So, like you said, with the gang element, the bad business, all these different elements, it's like building a house on sand. It's soon to crumble. The foundation is not strong. So therefore,
what really happened? The lasting questions. Even with the verdict delivered and Suge behind bars, one thing never faded. The questions, the rumors, the what-ifs. Some still argue it wasn't murder, that Suge was ambushed not once but twice that day. First at the Straight Outta Compton shoot, then again at Tam's Burgers. They point to Bone Sloan's own words, that he hit Suge first, that he was heated, that he didn't expect things to go that far. Others say the video is clear. Suge had options. He could have left. He didn't have to hit the gas twice. That second lunge, the one that crushed Terry Carter, didn't look like fear. It looked like rage. There's also the silence. Why did Bone refuse to testify? Was it loyalty, fear, street code, or something more complicated? And then there's Carter. By all accounts, he was the peacemaker. A man trying to stop the violence, not provoke it. He wasn't part of the scuffle. He wasn't armed. He just wanted to talk sense into someone he used to call a friend. Instead, he ended up dead on the pavement, while the man responsible drove off like it was just another Thursday. In the streets of Compton, people still talk. Some whisper that Suge's paranoia had reached a breaking point, that years of enemies, betrayals, and pressure had built up until he snapped. Others claim it was a setup, that Suge walked into a trap and panicked. And then there are those who say none of that matters, because at the end of the day, a man is dead, and another made the decision to hit the gas. Truth is, the full story might never be known. The courtroom closed the case. But in barbershops, interviews, and street corners, the legend keeps spinning. One thing's certain, this wasn't just a crime, it was a mirror. A final violent reflection of everything Suge had become. The echo of a gangster's last ride. When the dust settled, what remained was a man stripped of power, a legacy tangled in tragedy, and a moment caught forever on tape. The hit and run at Tam's wasn't just a crime scene, it was a turning point. A line in the sand between the myth of Suge Knight and the man behind it. In the 90s, Suge was untouchable. He could storm into offices, swing deals with threats, and make people disappear from studios and stages. But time moves fast, and by 2015, the fear was fading. The industry had changed, the rules had changed. Suge hadn't. He showed up to that burger stand expecting respect, maybe even fear. What he got instead was resistance. And in that split second, the moment the pedal hit the floor, everything that made him legendary came crashing down. 28 years. That's the sentence. But what it really means is life. Suge will be in his 80s before he's even eligible for release. And the world he knew, it's gone. The label, the artists, the empire, all gone. And what about Terry Carter? His name doesn't appear on platinum plaques or behind gold record frames. But he was real, a father, a husband, a man trying to do the right thing. And he's gone too. Suge's story will keep being told. through documentaries, interviews, memes, and rumors. Some will say he was a visionary, others will say he was a villain. But one thing is clear, the streets don't forget. Because what happened that day in Compton wasn't just another chapter in hip-hop history, it was the final ride of a man who spent his whole life in control until he lost it all in a parking lot. The price of power. Suge Knight didn't fall overnight. His empire cracked slowly, with every threat, every headline, every bridge burned. But in the end, it wasn't the music industry, the law, or even his rivals that brought him down. It was himself. That afternoon in Compton wasn't an accident. It was the collision of ego, pride, and a past that never let go. Suge once ruled the most dangerous label in music. Now he's locked away in a cell, no posse, no platinum, no power. And what did it all cost? A man is dead. Another still walks with pain in his bones, a family shattered, a legacy forever stained. The same streets that once feared him now tell stories of how it ended. Not in a blaze of glory, but in a blur of tires on pavement and a courtroom where even his legend couldn't save him. This wasn't just the end of Suge Knight's freedom. It was the final echo of a decade ruled by force, fear, and fame. And maybe that's the real story. So now it's your turn. Was this justice or just the last act in a cycle that started long before Tam's Burgers? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story opened your eyes, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories behind hip-hop's biggest legends, the ones that shaped the culture and the ones that paid the price.